The clock struck midnight, and Karen lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Her body was heavy with exhaustion, but sleep had been elusive for weeks. Tonight, she hoped for peace, unaware that this night would mark the beginning of her worst nightmare. Her eyelids grew heavy, and she began to drift off when a sudden, crushing weight settled on her chest. Her eyes shot open, and panic surged through her as she realized she couldn't move. It was as if her body had turned to stone. She tried to scream, to call for help, but no sound came from her throat. Her breaths came in short, shallow gasps as terror gripped her. The room was bathed in a faint glow from the streetlight outside, and everything appeared normal at first glance. But something felt off, an eerie presence, as if she wasn't alone. Then she saw it. At the far corner of the room, where the light barely reached, a shadow began to take form. At first, it was formless, a dark smear against the wall. But slowly it grew, twisting and writhing until it took on the shape of a figure. It stood unnaturally tall, its head nearly brushing the ceiling. Its limbs were long and spindly, ending in claws that gleamed faintly in the dim light. The shadow figure had no discernible face, yet Karen felt its gaze boring into her, freezing her blood. She tried to close her eyes, to block out the sight, but her eyelids wouldn't obey. She was trapped, forced to watch as it began to move. The figure glided toward her, its movements unnaturally smooth, almost as if it weren't walking but floating. The closer it came, the heavier the air in the room grew until it felt like she was drowning in it. When it reached the edge of her bed, it stopped. Karen's mind screamed as it leaned forward, its featureless face mere inches from hers. Then it spoke. The voice wasn't a sound, but a sensation, a cold, slithering whisper that seemed to bypass her ears and sink directly into her mind. "You've let me in," it said. "You brought me here." Karen's thoughts raced. What did it mean? She didn't understand. She wanted to shake her head, to deny it, but her body remained unresponsive. The figure straightened, its form flickering like a glitch in reality, and Karen's heart nearly stopped when it began to reach for her. Its clawed hand hovered above her chest, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then pain erupted through her body, a burning, searing agony that felt like her very soul was being ripped apart. She wanted to scream, but the paralysis held her in its cruel grip. Just as she thought she couldn't endure it any longer, the figure pulled back, and the pain vanished as quickly as it had come. Karen gasped for air, her chest heaving as she realized she could move again. She bolted upright, her eyes scanning the room, but the figure was gone. The shadows were just shadows once more, and the oppressive weight had lifted. She stumbled out of bed, turning on every light in her apartment, desperate to banish the darkness. Her reflection in the bathroom mirror stopped her cold. A faint black mark, like the imprint of a claw, marred her chest where the figure had touched her. She reached up to touch it, and a jolt of icy pain shot through her fingers. Karen didn't sleep the rest of the night. She spent hours on her laptop, searching for answers, trying to understand what had happened. She came across countless stories of sleep paralysis and shadow figures, but none of them explained the mark on her chest or the words the creature had spoken. "You've let me in." The phrase echoed in her mind, chilling her to the core. She didn't know what it meant, but deep down she felt it wasn't over. The figure hadn't left. It was waiting, watching. And as the nights passed, Karen's fear grew. The mark on her chest began to spread, dark tendrils creeping across her skin like veins of ink. She started seeing the figure in the corners of her vision during the day, flickering in and out of existence. Karen realized too late that it wasn't just sleep paralysis. She had opened a door to something far darker, something that wasn't bound to her dreams. It was here, in her waking world, and it wasn't going to leave. As the days turned into weeks, Karen vanished from her job, her friends, her life. Her apartment remained untouched, the lights still burning in every room. but Karen was gone. All that remained was a single, chilling message scrawled on the wall above her bed, written in what looked like ash. I am inside. The clock struck midnight, and Karen lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Her body was heavy with exhaustion, but sleep had been elusive for weeks. Tonight, she hoped for peace, unaware that this night would mark the beginning of her worst nightmare. Her eyelids grew heavy, and she began to drift off when a sudden, crushing weight settled on her chest. Her eyes shot open, and panic surged through her as she realized she couldn't move. It was as if her body had turned to stone. She tried